for a touchdown.
It's your inside pass to everything Saints football.
See you later, bye. Touchdown, Rashid Shaheed.
We'll take you to places most fans never go. To practice, to the sideline, to the locker room, following every twist, turn, and touchdown of the Saints season.
That is going to be a touchdown. Taysom Hill. Taysom TD.
Welcome to Inside Black and Gold.
To the end zone, and that is a touchdown for Chris Olave.
Now, here are your hosts, Steve Geller and Jeff Nowak.
Oh, baby!
Welcome inside Black and Gold. Steve Geller and Jeff Nowak here at Radio Row for Super Bowl 59. Got a lot to get to. Obviously, the big game coming up on Sunday between the Eagles and Kansas City Chiefs, but we're more concerned with all things Saints, and
yes.
There's a bunch of stuff to talk to. Heard from some former players talking. We got a current player that we got to sit down with. But yeah, day 3 right now on Radio Row, and things have definitely escalated today. And I feel like the NFL Experience opening has brought in the public presence here as well.
Yeah, you'll see a lot of people moving around behind us. It's a busy day here on Radio Row. We got Thomas Morstead hanging around. I also saw Mark Ingram wandering. Hopefully we can chat with some of these guys today. But we will have Bryan Bresee in the second segment. Saints defensive tackle sat down with us for a few minutes, talked to him about what he's here working with. How the last season went, that sort of thing. A lot of good insight from him. This first segment, I want to talk about what all happened at media night the other night. Kind of a crazy experience.
I was going to say, how was that walking around too with the Cajun Cannon as well?
Oh, it was a good time. I got some clips I want to get to, but I do want to. Okay, so and then the final segment, I want to talk about Kellen Moore. Got a chance to sit down, and I say sit down, stand up and talk to Kellen at media night. We have a bunch of clips we want to play. That sort of thing. We'll get to that in the final segment. But yeah, the Cajun Cannon and Vic Fangio go way back, and there's a pretty funny moment between those two guys. I'll play the clip for you here.
Yeah, nothing but great memories from here. Just wish we could have had a little bit more playoff success, but hey, that's the way it goes.
Bring up a bad memory. What do you remember about maybe if you had a different quarterback?
Yeah, if we had a quarterback worth the shit. You guys know who this is?
Yes. What about the Dolphins and the vision that you saw with Zack Baun? Because the Saints didn't even let him play.
I know. He didn't play a lot of defense, so the tape was limited. I just kind of liked the way he moved. I saw some instincts, and I was intrigued, and I thought he could do it.
Yeah, and so Vic there is talking about Zack Baun. He's referring to Bobby Hebert. It was kind of a funny moment because he was talking to Fletcher Mackel, kind of asked him about, okay, what are his memories in the Superdome and as a Saints coach, because he was the defensive coordinator for the Dome Patrol days, and he's saying, oh, nothing but good memories, and Bobby's like, oh, what if you had a good quarterback, and he just kind of gave him crap. But it's kind of funny because if you didn't know it was Bobby, you'd be like, wow, he's being awfully rude.
People are Googling, like, who was the quarterback of the Saints during the Dome Patrol?
Yeah, being awfully rude to that white-haired gentleman. But no, he's talking about Zack Baun, and Zack Baun was kind of the fascinating piece of this whole defensive puzzle for the Eagles, and fascinating in a lot of ways. One way, he's on a 1-year deal, and he's a Defensive Player of the Year candidate, right? Like, that's not normal. And so you just hope he can get through the Super Bowl without any injuries or anything like that, because he's gonna cash in. He's gonna cash in big time. And there was a really funny moment between Zach and Jameis, which Jameis Winston, who was here as a Fox Sports social media correspondent, kind of went viral on my Twitter page. So let's watch that here.
He's a funny guy. Oh my God, that's Jameis. That's Jameis Winston.
Yes, Zack Baun, Jameis Winston, Fox Sports. What's that? See you, brother. So proud of you. Come and answer these questions. I gotta work. Okay. There's a time and a place for that. Zach, man, obviously, look how good the Lord works. Wow. You started here in New Orleans, and now He brings you back here on this day, one of the biggest days that we dreamed of, brother. We talked about this moment together, cherishing it together. But you get to cherish it here with your family, bro. Man, everybody want to know one thing. What's your favorite color?
My favorite color is orange, Jameis. Thank you.
Orange, man. Listen, I love oranges. I feed my baby mandarins every morning. Are you feeding your baby oranges in the morning to get their vitamin C?
He doesn't like oranges yet, but we're working on it.
Man, I just want you to talk about your process, man. A lot of people didn't know that we were locker mates, kind of. You was right across the, and I knew that they had you at the position that you could do, but it didn't show off your unique abilities. Man, talk about how much success you had by just being back home to where you've been playing your entire life.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's special, man. And we had so many conversations about what our future would hold being free agents, but just being somewhere who wanted you and being in the environment, how much the environment impacts you, it's really cool.
Right. And we talking about wanted, man. Obviously, I'm looking for a job too. Man, if you was a GM, where would Jameis Winston go? Where do you think I need to go?
Wherever his heart desires, man. Whatever's compelling him.
Whatever's in the Lord's will.
There you go.
I'm thankful for you. And you know what we do, bro. I'm so grateful that you are the epitome of resilience. And God has used you for an amazing story to come back here in NOLA, man, for you to earn what you deserve, bro. But you know what I do. I eat doubles. You want to eat one with me? I got one for you, dog.
No, man.
Come on. Man. Eat that dub, Zack Baun. Man, I'm so grateful for you, man. Keep your family for you. Cherish this moment.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. We'll be in touch.
All right, so if you've ever wondered whether Jameis Winston wanders around with W cookies
He does.
in his pockets, he absolutely does. It is the least surprising Jameis Winston thing ever. Well, not the least surprising. Second least surprising to the fact that he's dominating as a social media correspondent for Fox Sports because he's.
I gotta say, I'm not a fan of Jameis, the quarterback, but man, Jameis, the reporter, thumbs up.
He is just a special kind of person.
Yeah.
I don't know. He just, he was sitting down there in the crowd, like, yo, Zack Baun, Zack Baun, Zack Baun. And he asked, Zack Baun's favorite color is orange. I wouldn't have guessed that. He's a Wisconsin guy. I would have thought it would be red or white or something. I don't know. Maybe green, orange. I don't know where you get orange in that. Anyway, it's a strange. Maybe he's just a cheese curds guy, and he's kind of conflating that. But Zack Baun, he's talked a lot about the Saints this week. I was curious how he would address it. Doesn't it sound like there's any ill will at all? I think he appreciates to some extent that things weren't going well for him here, and it's not just that the Saints couldn't find a way to use him, but that is a big part of it. Is that they couldn't. I also don't think that he got the best out of himself here, and sometimes in new location you can do that. And you'll see him on Sunday in the Super Bowl, and he's going to be flying around making plays. He had 151 tackles this year, 3.5 sacks. He had an interception, 4 passes defense. He's all over the field, and you're just happy for him. I'm happy for him. I like Zack Baun. It would be nice if he could have done that here, but I think if nothing else, it kind of serves as a cautionary tale of when you do not have a scheme fit for a player, it's not always worth forcing it just because it's this is an elite athlete. You can't always make it work with an elite athlete. Sometimes it has to fit what you're doing, and we'll see if he can continue that beyond the season. I think he will.
Definitely one of those situations where the Saints scouting department did a heck of a job, obviously identifying the talent that Zack Baun had, a third-round pick here, but for whatever reason just could not get on the field and wasn't a fit.
Yeah, it's funny because people want to argue both sides of it, which is the scouting sucks, but also they were stupid for letting Zack Baun go.
Right.
And it's one of those things has to be better than you're playing it for. Either they scouted him well and the development wasn't good, or they didn't scout him well and they were right to let him go. It can't be both. But, it is what it is. We'll see how the defense develops. That's the question. One of the biggest questions. We're going to talk a lot about Kellen Moore, and Kellen Moore, he should be the head coach. That's going to be your offense, whatever. If you hire Kellen Moore, you're going to have to make a lot of decisions on defense. You're going to have to hire a kind of rock star defensive coordinator the same way with Dennis Allen. You needed to go get Clint Kubiak and say, I want you to reinvent our offense. They're going to have to go find a defensive coordinator to say, we need you to reinvent our defense. And I'm not going to say the cupboard's bare because there's still plenty of coaches out there.
Good, though.
But you're not going to. It's not like you're going to go and find the top defensive coordinator on the market and say, "Come on, to do your thing." Where are they? They probably already have jobs. You can't hire someone else's defensive coordinator, so you're going to be looking at linebackers coaches and defensive line coaches. Maybe there's someone on your staff you like, but I mean, who's to say Kellen likes that guy? It's probably going to be someone Kellen knows, someone Kellen wants to work with. Maybe he brings someone with him from the Eagles that he likes on that staff. I don't know. But that's going to be, everyone's focused on Kellen Moore right now. If the defense goes to shit, it's not going to matter how great your offense is. Like we saw that with Sean Payton.
Sure.
When he didn't have the defense figured out, the Saints struggled. Drew Brees was always Drew Brees. You still were going 7-9 3 years in a row because you couldn't get your defense figured out. So
heartbreaking for sure.
We're gonna answer that question as a head coach, but then you're gonna have even bigger questions down the line of like, okay, what scheme are we running? I don't know, but we have a deck set for certain players and a certain scheme that if you want to change it, you're gonna have to change that deck. And I don't know how much they want to do that. I don't know how much they want to move on from veteran players, these bigger body defensive ends that they've been bringing in over the last decade. Right? Like there's a reason you go for players like Peyton Turner, Marcus Davenport, right? It's not just because they evaluate these players and it's like, oh, well, these are who we like. It's because they fit what you want to do. And so if you change everything, like that's why when I look at you got to be prepared when you're changing head coaches and you're doing this. You got to be prepared for some lean seasons because when you have to reset like that, it takes time. It's really rare to see a team turn over a defense, turn over a coaching staff, and suddenly be right there.
Well, everyone will say, "Oh, Sean Payton did it year one."
He did. He did. And again, that's rare. That's rare. And we'll talk more about Kellen Moore. It's just this Super Bowl is kind of telling of like continuity is important. Now you can have continuity in a lot of different ways, right? Like Nick Sirianni, he is the continuity, but you hired new offense coordinator, new defense coordinator, and you made it work. In Kansas City, the continuity is Andy Reid on offense, Spags on defense, and you continue to run that back, and you get better and better and better at it. Resetting is not easy. It's one of the things people get mad about. Oh, continuity. They just don't want to fire anybody. They want to move on. One of the reasons is because you're setting yourself up for a lot of question marks that you don't have the answers to right now. And one thing you could say about the Saints over the last few years, yeah, they struggled, but they had a lot of the answers in terms of what are we going to be doing? What is our scheme? What are the players we're going after? And right now, those are all question marks.
Yeah, like you mentioned, people want the reset, but it really isn't that easy. Or if it can be, but you can't expect to have immediate positive results. It can be a process. Unless you land that generational quarterback, a la, the Washington Commanders getting Jaden Daniels with Dan Quinn in his first year there.
And it helps when you can find a player like Zack Baun on someone else's roster and be like, we think he's the guy. Like Vic Fangio told Bobby, it's like, we didn't see a ton of tape on him, but we liked the way he moved. We liked what he was able to do. We liked his skill set. And
I thought it was pretty impressive, too. He talked about right away in free agency, the Eagles were pursuing him.
Yeah, well, I mean, it makes sense. Like, what type of players you want, right? Yeah. And that's who you bring in. That's the answer I don't know for the Saints right now. But, one of the reasons you brought in DeMario was because he fit what we wanted to do. And now you have DeMario Davis. One more thing I want to talk about before we move on. Kirk Cousins yesterday made some waves because he went out and said this on Good Morning Football.
So it didn't really affect me too much, but then against the Saints, got hit pretty good in my right shoulder and elbow. And from there, kind of dealing with that, was something I was working through and just never really could get it to where I wanted it. And so now that the season's over, you have the time and the energy to say, okay, let's get the right ankle back. Let's get the shoulder back. Let's get the elbow back. And if we can do that, feel like I got a new life ahead of me here in pro football.
But yeah, so basically what Kirk Cousins said is in that Week 10 game against the Saints, and you're looking at it and you're saying, okay, the Falcons are 6-3 right now. They're rolling. They're in control of the NFC South, right? They had a 2-game lead on anybody else. The Bucs are kind of reeling. They lost Mike Evans for an extended period of time. Chris Godwin, he goes down. And so suddenly the Falcons look like the presumptive favorite. Like you look in midseason, the Falcons were the talk of the town. Kirk Cousins was a great signing.
Right.
Blah, blah, blah. They go to New Orleans, face the Saints team on a 7-game losing streak, just fired their head coach. Saints win. Now, what you didn't know in that matchup was Kirk Cousins apparently, I think it was the hit Peyton Turner laid on him because the right tackle.
I was going to ask you, do you know who laid that lick?
I mean, it could have been a few different hits. He got lit up a couple times, but the biggest one was Peyton Turner in the first half. If you remember, it was a forced fumble. The right tackle kind of tripped, and Peyton just went clean and just wiped him out. And apparently, he hurt his shoulder in such a fashion that it affected the rest of his season. And I believe him when he says that, because you look at his splits before and after that game, and he's a different guy, different player. And it got to the point where they benched him, put Michael Penix in. The Falcons insisted he was not hurt all season. They not in so many words, but they insisted that the injury was not an issue in terms of why they were benching him. He was just not playing well enough. And there was a point after that game, they had a bye, and then he ended up on the injury report with a shoulder injury. And he came off the next day. It was an estimated injury report.
Yeah.
And they were like, that was just an error. It wasn't actually in it. Well, it turns out he was hurt. And so if you can take nothing else from that season for the Saints, they effectively ruined the Falcons season with that game and that win. Because from that point on, the Falcons were just a wreck. And they're going to say, hey, we got Michael Penix, we're good. You dropped $240 million on Kirk Cousins.
Pretty pricey backup, right.
He's kind of talking his way out the door. That's why he puts that out there in the world, because he's trying to get released. He's trying to get cut.
Yeah.
Now, they don't want to cut him because they're paying him either way, because they have all this dead money attached to it. They'd rather just have him as their backup because they're not saving money by cutting him. But he's clearly setting it up, just cut me, get rid of me. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, they would much rather have him out there as the backup than have to just eat that dead money hit this year. But it doesn't sound like he's going to make that process simple at all. He's bitter about it. You could tell he's not happy about it.
Sure, and he definitely is a guy that thinks he can be a starter somewhere. And I think there will be a couple teams out there that could use a quarterback, obviously. And I don't know, Kirk Cousins might just be a backup right now, but he's sure getting paid starter money.
Well, here's the thing. If he gets released, he wants to get released because he can go sign somewhere on a minimum deal,
right,
and play, and still, he's getting that money either way. But he can go land on a team that does not have a ton of cap space, but needs a quarterback, like the Giants, who they have cap space, but he could go sign somewhere on a minimum contract, not worry, because he is already getting that money from the Falcons. They don't want that to happen. They don't want to be paying Kirk Cousins to play somewhere else. So it's a whole mess for them. So I don't want to hear Terry Fontenot's a genius because he bet both sides of the line and won. No, if you do that, you're going to win. You can bet the over and the under. You're going to win one of those. You're still going to break even at best. Anyway.
Right. And I think, Penix had a decent rookie campaign and didn't have, a god-awful showing, but didn't play lights out either, which you wouldn't expect.
Played well in that game against the Commanders, right? He got them to overtime.
Yeah.
They lost in overtime. He led that touchdown drive. It was his first touchdown throw in the NFL. He's got a lot to prove.
Yeah.
Falcons fans are going to go into this season talking about how he's the dude. We'll see. But either way, let's wrap up that segment. We're going to come back. Let's talk a little about Kellen Moore. Let's break down, what did he say in his media interview? Where do we land on him? What do we think of his first? It kind of feels like that was his first interview as a Saints head coach. So we'll talk about that. Well, either way, this is Inside Black and Gold. We will be right back.
Welcome back to Inside Black and Gold. Steve Geller, Jeff Nowak now welcoming him in. Saints defensive tackle Bryan Bresee. Bryan, thanks so much for joining us here on Radio Row. How you been doing?
Doing great. Thanks for having me, guys.
Appreciate it. Know you're here with Big Brothers Big Sisters launching a big annual big draft campaign in partnership with the NFL. Tell us a little bit about that and how you got involved.
Yeah, so the chapter just opened up back in New Orleans. It was shut down since Hurricane Katrina, so it just got opened back up in New Orleans. And the big draft campaign is really just trying to get 10,000 big brothers, big sisters to sign up and get involved. Right now there's 30,000 kids that don't have a mentor in the program, and just trying to change that and get the message out and do anything we can to get involved. So if you go to bebignow.org, you're able to sign up and get involved on the cause.
Yeah, I know you have a few people tailing you today. Keep an eye on. How did you get involved with this? Is this an important thing to you?
Yeah. I think I've seen a lot of guys on my team get involved with this, and everyone's spoken so highly about it, and just being able to see a change in the youth and doing whatever we can to help out in any way. So yeah,
you got that great influence on the line with you with Cam Jordan.
Yeah, absolutely.
Looking at your season this year, obviously some ups and downs, but you personally had a big breakout year. Just talk about, I guess, this season as a whole for you and what it felt like, I guess, basically to bust onto the scene in the NFL.
Yeah, like you said, I mean, definitely some ups and downs this year, with a whole bunch of stuff. But man, yeah, had a good year too coming out, but definitely still a lot of room to improve, and just I think a lot of that just comes with experience, and I think from year one to year two, that was kind of the big jump for me, just being able to play, being able to have real in-game experiences, and not only that, but off the field, seeing just the college and NFL are different. So watching guys like Cam or other guys that have been doing it for a long time, just seeing how they go about their business and just trying to model after that.
Right. Was there anything specific that you worked on last offseason that you feel like you brought into this season and really delivered on?
Honestly, I feel like I probably just had more time to train in the offseason than the year before, with the combine and draft and all that kind of stuff. And then, man, on top of that, last year, I don't think a lot of people know I had 2 surgeries right after the season. So I had to get my labrum done, and I had a knee scope after last season. So that still wasn't a full offseason for me. So this is really my true first full offseason where, I'm healthy and have this whole time just to work and get better. So
yeah, I feel like that's something that a lot of people might not know about NFL players.
Yeah.
Like the season ends, and all of a sudden it's like, okay, what procedures do I have to get done?
What can we fix?
What does this offseason look like for you? Do you have any plans to go out and work with anyone specific?
Yeah. So, man, right now I'm just back home training with my trainer that I've been with since freshman year of high school. But, man, every summer I'll go out to California to Proactive with a bunch of other guys. Cam came out and met us, but Colin Saunders, Grando was out there training. There's a bunch of NFL guys that go out there and train at a place called Proactive in Thousand Oaks. It's where I did my pre-draft combine and all that. So they got great, just a lot of D linemen out there that we can work with and just talk ball, and Sheldon Rankins, who was here, he'll be out there. Kenny Clark. There's just a lot of guys that go out there and we train together, and it's always just a great experience.
When things happen, Dennis Allen leaves, all of a sudden Joe Woods takes over as the primary defensive coordinator. How different were things for you guys in the locker room?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's a little weird when you lose your head coach. It's just all you're used to, and then especially for us, DA was kind of like our defense coordinator as well. He ran those meetings for us and called the plays, and so. But Coach Woods was always in there as well with us. So there wasn't a big change on plays or play calls or practice schedule, because I feel like it's probably tough to do in the middle of the season to try to change all that stuff when things are engraved in you. But there were definitely some minor changes, involved in having people move. So. Yeah.
One of the other changes was Todd Grantham was in charge of the defensive line, went over to Brian Young. There was a funny press conference once where Darren Rizzi said the words Brian's Young, talking about you, and then said Brian Young like 3 words later, and I was like, my head was spinning. But, one thing that Cam talked about is, he kind of brought a return to a technique and kind of working on technique and that being the focus. Did that change things? How did you see that shift midseason?
BY, I feel like, he's been here forever. With the Saints, he played here, and he was always somebody, even when I first came in, that, man, I'd be out there 15 minutes early working with him, just getting my technique stuff in, that kind of stuff. So, and he's been awesome. He's been great since I've been here. If guys want to go watch extra tape with them, he's in there watching it with them. It doesn't matter what time, whenever. Like, BY is a great guy, great coach, man. He was awesome for us, and again, it wasn't a big change for us because he's been in the room. He's worked with us. Like, it was kind of like almost a 2-coach tandem where, just kind of pass off back and forth between them for Indy and that kind of stuff. So it wasn't a big change for us, but absolutely it was a lot more focus on technique and fundamentals so that was probably the biggest change.
Do you think he's got a position coach in his future? Is that something he kind of?
Yeah, he could absolutely do it wherever he wanted, man. He's awesome. I got nothing but great things to say about BY. So.
Talk about year 2 playing in the NFL, but what about year 2 being in New Orleans? How's it been getting acclimated to the local scene?
Yeah, no, I love it. This place is awesome. I love spending my time here. My family loves being down here. It's been amazing. So, man, I've loved every second of it.
Even though we had a snowstorm a couple weeks ago.
That's okay.
Right?
I'm used to it from Maryland,
okay.
So it was okay. I couldn't believe they shut everything down. I was like, what's going on? I'll give rides. I was going to be an Uber driver for the day.
Originally being from New Jersey too, I'm used to the snow weather, but
they don't have the equipment or
salt,
the
plows,
infrastructure here. Right. That was when I first moved down. I told my girlfriend, now wife at the time, and I was like, oh, just get the snow plow out and salt the road. Like, you don't have that here.
Yeah. That's the issue. Yep.
I remember I had a conversation with my parents, and my mom was like, well, isn't the city doing something? I was like, yeah, they're waiting for it to melt. That's what they're doing.
It's going to be 70 next week. Don't worry.
Exactly.
So, this week is kind of crazy. You've kind of started to work your way around already. Do you have any plans for the rest of the week, take in some of the Super Bowl experience?
Yeah. I mean, man, just like you said, just take it in. I think, all the teammates will be back in town, get to hang out with all those guys. Yep. I'm sure some of my college teammates will be here, so get to see some of those guys. Some of them are playing in the game, so grab some dinner with them or something, man. Just excited to be here for it. This is my first time being, around for a Super Bowl. So,
what are your thoughts on Zack Baun? Obviously, went out to Philly, had a monster season. He's a Defensive Player of the Year candidate. He might still win. He's one of the finalists for that. What were your thoughts on what he was able to do out there?
Yeah, man, Zack's awesome. Zack was great for us, man. He was he kind of just took over any role that he had to with the Saints and did a phenomenal job at it. Never skipped a beat, was always positive. So he's a hell of a football player. So it's no surprise for me to see him doing what he's doing. He was awesome with us. You see him, he was off the ball, he was rushing off the edge with us. So, man, he just could do a lot of things. So he's just a super versatile player. And yeah, man, he's great.
You have a pick for the big game on Sunday, or you kind of staying neutral?
Yeah, I think, man, honestly, it would be tough for me to pick one of these teams to win. I really think it could be a coin toss either way. I think they're both,
odds makers feel the same way, too.
Yeah, I mean, I really wouldn't pick one way or the other. Like, I couldn't tell you. So, yeah, I mean, I think it could go either way.
It feels like it's hard to bet against the guy that's Patrick Mahomes, though. It seems like if he's got the ball at the last couple minutes in his hands, you feel like the Chiefs are going to come ahead.
Yeah. But man, then you gotta deal with the Eagles' run game, right? Like it's back and forth.
Yeah, your experience obviously against both of these teams.
Yeah.
When you watch these Eagles offense out there, is there anything like man, we shut these guys out through three quarters? Like, what is this?
No, I mean even then, it's like that was a physical game that we played in. Like that was one of those games where like you woke up the next day and you were like, oh goodness, like that was tough. So both those games, the Chiefs as well, like both those games were real physical games. Bruising games, but it's just like those are the games you live for, and I think against both those teams, when you play really good teams like that, that's always what it's like. So, yeah, it'll be a good game.
Yeah, when the next week the Eagles went to Tampa and got blown out, and I was like, Tampa needs to send a thank you note to the Saints because they beat them up. They weren't ready to go play that game because they were too bruised.
It was both ways, man. I'm telling you, it was like the next day everyone came and I was like, oh goodness, I don't know.
Brian, just tell us about you're working with Big Brothers Big Sisters in this big draft campaign. Tell us a little bit more about it before we let you go.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think the main thing is just getting people involved in the community, especially now having the branch opened up in New Orleans. Just trying, like I said, there's 30,000 kids right now that don't have a mentor that are looking for one, and there's many capable people in this city that can go in and anywhere really to help that cause and make a change. So BeBigNow.org. Go sign up and get involved.
Awesome stuff. Appreciate your time. Have a great time at the Super Bowl here, and look forward to watching you more in your progression next season.
Yes, sir. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Bryan Bresee here on the Inside Black and Gold podcast. We'll be back with more right after this. Stay tuned.
Back on Inside Black and Gold down at Radio Row. Just had that interview with Bryan Bresee. Steve, okay, what was your impression of Bryan? What was your impression of Bryan's season? What are your thoughts on Bryan going into year 3?
Definitely thought he took a nice step forward. Year 2 for him. Saw an uptick in that, pressures on quarterbacks, getting the sacks. The one thing he still definitely needs to work on though is being more of a force in the run game. But overall, definitely a decent year 2 for Bresee, and just like what he brings to the team in with that pass rush up the middle, because, getting that into the quarterback's face right up the gut is so vital and crucial. I just feel like the Saints don't have much of that other than Bresee in the middle of that D-line at least.
Yeah, he's a different kind of athlete at the defensive tackle spot than they've had in a long time, right? And I think there's something to be said for that. So, I like what he's able to do. I need to pair him with a space-eating, big-bodied defensive tackle. I need to pair him with a tree stump that can take double teams, that can create space for him and other pass rushers to get up the field. I don't think they have that right now. Like, I like Colin Saunders as a depth piece. I don't think he is a starting defensive tackle.
Agree, totally.
And so that's where I'm looking in the draft, whether it's the first pick, second pick. Like, I like what I have in Bryan Bresee. I know that he is not an elite all-around defensive tackle, but he is an elite pass-rushing defensive tackle, and I think he can get better in the run game. But I don't think that you can look at him and say, like, he can be that all-pro, all-around defensive tackle. I need to pair him with somebody, and that pairing can be elite.
Yeah.
But I need to give him help on the interior, and I can't sit him in there and ask him to run, to play the run constantly, because he's so good at getting after the quarterback. I need to be able to use that. And I think, again, like we talked about in the first segment, a lot of that's going to come down to who's your defensive coordinator? What's your defense? What are you doing in that scheme? And how does that allow Bryan to do that? But I do think, year two, you're talking, approaching double-digit sacks. I know he didn't get there. I'm a fan of Bryan. I think he's going to be a really good player.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, if you can get another DT to pair up with him, and the good thing with this draft, I keep hearing it, is stock full, one of the best drafts in a while for defensive tackles, and hopefully the Saints can find themselves a space eater.
Yeah, and we talked about Deion Walker, like 6'7", 340. Like, you can find guys like that. Will they be ready to start immediately? Probably not. You'd probably have to go and try to find a guy in the first round if you want him to start immediately, but I'm okay with developing a guy. I just need to continue to stock up that position, and that's something the Saints are going to do. Speaking of, what are the Saints going to do? Kellen Moore.
I think it's pretty safe to say, too, with Kellen, that he is going to be the Saints quarterback, barring any unforeseen...
Head coach.
Yeah, head coach. Sorry, what did I say?
You said quarterback.
Quarterback, wow. He's going to be the Saints head coach, barring any unforeseen issue where after the Super Bowl he goes, nah, I'm going to stay in Philly, because if the Saints were going to hire someone else, they would have done so by now.
Yeah, no, there's no question. There's no question. And here's everything Kellen had to say when he was asked directly about the head coaching interview. At least when I was there, he spoke for an hour. I was not there for the whole hour, but I was there for about 15 minutes talking with him. And this is what he said on the coaching search in general.
It's obviously been a good process. You have an opportunity to go through these different processes, and having an opportunity to meet with Mickey and their leadership group has been great. And it's set up in a way that allows us to focus on this game, and then we'll see what happens after that.
When you say the process is set up to allow you to focus on this game, can you explain how that is? Because fans always worry about when they're
No, it's just pure focus on this. You don't have to worry about a single thing except for this opportunity.
Selling yourself on in the meetings with Mickey throughout this process. What did you talk about with you?
Again, it was just a great opportunity to meet the leadership group from Mickey and all the rest of the leadership group in New Orleans. It's a great group. It's a group that really cares about the team, cares about football. Had great conversations with those guys, and we'll see where it takes us. Again, I think there's a lot of good pieces. We came down here, we had a really good battle, week 3, and it was a challenge, and we were fortunate to come out here with a win. And so, every time you come down here, it seems to be a challenge. Each and every time we've come down here and played.
All right, yeah, and so his answer to that was similar to Mike Kafka, right? In that, he talked for 2 minutes probably in terms of just directly addressing the coaching search. Didn't really say anything, and. I didn't think that he sounded quite as head coach-like as a Kafka did. I think that's something he'll have to develop, is kind of that coach voice, if you will. Like, I don't know exactly how to describe it, but like when I was listening to him talk, I was very aware that I was listening to a coordinator talk. It didn't strike me as head coach energy. And, whatever that means to you, it is something. I just think, like, okay, one of the reasons Sean Payton was able to survive those 7 and 9 seasons, or even like the year after they went to the NFC Championship, obviously things kind of fell off a cliff a little bit, dialed it back in, going into the Super Bowl. Like, when even in down seasons, Sean Payton commanded a room. Sean Payton commanded respect, and you kind of approached him in a certain way. I just think that's not what it's going to be like for Kellen, at least not early on. And so I'm curious how quickly people would turn on him if things didn't go well. Because I just don't. I think that his traits. He's a football brain, right? and that's great when things are going well. When things are going poorly, and you're not great with the media, and you're not great kind of at communicating in that kind of forceful manner to command respect. It's really easy to kind of pile on somebody. And that's what happened to Dennis Allen.
I was going to say, that's where I felt one area definitely Dennis was lacking in just being that leader in front of a room.
Yeah, and we'll see. We'll see how that goes. I could be completely wrong.
I'm hoping with Kellen, like you said, maybe doesn't sound like a head coach right now. Things have to be dialed back a bit because of the NFL rules too, and he can't really be himself either, when trying to explain the situation of being interviewed for this head coaching spot. I think it was pretty telling too when you heard Aaron Glenn get that head coaching job with the Jets and his introductory press conference, and bam, he came out of a cannon right away. And I don't know if he was really necessarily like that as a defensive coordinator with interviews with the media.
I mean, I think he probably was. You just don't see interviews with defensive coordinators all that often. How many times do you watch the defensive? How many times have you seen Vic Fangio talk, right? But I think that's a good example. Like when you hear Aaron Glenn talk, that is a head coach in terms of at least the vibes you get from him are head coach vibes, head coach energy. I don't feel that way about Ben Johnson. I think Ben Johnson is an awkward dude, and if things go poorly in Chicago, he's going to have a hard time. Now, he is set up for success in Chicago in a way that Kellen Moore will never be set up for success in New Orleans, at least not to start. So, I think it's more likely that he never has to deal with that end of it because the Bears just win games. They have the quarterback. They have all these pieces. They have the star wide receivers, and you're gonna be able to attract free agents because of that. And because of that alone, he's gonna have a much easier time. I just think we're gonna have to accept a level of growth from Kellen that I don't know if people are ready to do. I think he's going to be the head coach.
Right.
I do think he's going to be the head coach. I just, I think people are in for kind of a rude awakening if they think that if this is the next Sean Payton. And I do think that a lot of people are approaching it that way of this is going to work out because it's the same thing they did with Sean Payton. These are two very different people.
Absolutely.
Now, they were both quarterbacks. They both kind of had football backgrounds, right? Like they both came up through the Cowboys system. They both, have a lot of traits in common, but personality is not one of them. And there's a few other. One thing that Kellen was asked about was the Saints scandal. I don't know if scandal's the word. It's reporting on the archdiocese situation and the PR nightmare that they have created for themselves in terms of not just staying out of it completely. But Kellen did stay out of it completely, and this is what he said.
I'm not aware. Yeah, I don't know. I don't have anything.
I thought that was an interesting answer because he said he kind of caught in between I don't know about it and I don't have anything to say about it, and he started saying I don't really know about it at all, but he clearly does, and he didn't want to lie, but then he was I just want to shut this down entirely, so he kind of just put it that way. I don't think that's we kind of talked about this on Monday. I don't think that's going to end up being the driving force one way or the other. I don't. Whether it's something people talk about and continues to develop at a larger level, I don't know. But I think if Kellen Moore wants to be a head coach in the NFL, that's not going to be what forces him to step back. Now, the Eagles could drop a bag on his head and talk him out of it. He could have people close to him saying, this isn't a situation you want to get into. I don't know. I don't get the impression that that's going to be the deciding factor.
No, I don't think that the off-the-field scandal, like you said, if you want to call it that, is going to be an issue when hiring Moore. It is interesting, though, to, get an idea of what he thinks might be going on here, though, behind closed doors, you could say. It's a little bit of a concerning situation. Possibly, but that coupled with maybe some of the salary cap issues maybe does deter him. I don't know.
You could see. I mean, it's a question. We're not getting the answers right now.
No, right.
And
we'll have to wait till Monday.
Yeah, I did think. I asked him about, or he was asked about that game against Derek Carr when they played in college, and this is what he said about that.
Derek. Yes, Derek and I played against each other 1 year. My senior year, his sophomore year. We certainly have known Derek for a long time. Tons of respect for him as a quarterback in this league. He's had a tremendous career and done a lot of really good things.
I'm sure you've had that happen, but that you could be coaching. How do you coach players?
Yeah, it's a unique aspect. Obviously, I was fortunate to be able to get into coaching fairly young. My first time coordinating in Dallas, half the room was guys that I was teammates with 2 years before, and so I was teammates with Dak, teammates with Witten, a lot of the receivers, a lot of the running backs, Zeke, and so it's a unique aspect of my journey. But I've been fortunate to be around some great people.
Yeah, and I posted that quote on Twitter, and it's one of those situations where everyone's going to look at it and try to be like, interpret it in the way that they want to interpret it. They're like, he hates Derek Carr, he loves Derek Carr. I think that's as close to a non-answer, a no comment as you can get in that sense. I do think that it's an interesting scenario that, much like Kellen Moore and Dak Prescott, like they know each other as players,
right?
Not just as head coach, quarterback. I mean, Kellen Moore is only 2 years older than Derek Carr. Like, they are basically contemporaries at the position. But as we talked about on Monday, Kellen Moore, despite being 36 years old, has been around coaching forever. He's been an offensive coordinator for 6 years in the NFL. He played 8 years ago, right? Like, he was a player in the NFL. I remember watching him as a player in the NFL. He went from a Cowboys quarterback to a Cowboys quarterbacks coach in one offseason. 2 years later, he's the offensive coordinator. Yeah. So despite the young age, it's not a situation where, you're just hiring this neophyte who you don't know what he's going to do. Like, it's very well documented how he works with quarterbacks, how he works with coaches and assistants, multiple different systems, multiple schemes. And I think that's going to be a big part in how he's able to adapt to the Saints.
That was something you mentioned right there with Moore going from quarterbacks to quarterbacks coach, and then just 1 year as a quarterbacks coach, and boom, he's promoted to offensive coordinator right away. That to me says a lot.
Yeah, and I mean, his ability to coach Dak Prescott,
right,
a guy who he knows very well and is not that much younger than him, I think is a good sign, because whoever you bring in is going to have to figure out that quarterback room, and whether it's Derek Carr or somebody else, I need someone to develop a quarterback, because the Saints have done a lot of things over the last 20 years. One of those things is not developing a quarterback. They've never developed a quarterback.
With Kellen Moore, I do appreciate, some of the Eagles players, you've heard, some comments about him. You've heard offensive genius, and you've heard also the term magician. And that, to me, interesting stuff. Obviously, of course, they're going to pump up the guy. I don't think anybody really wants him to leave. Just hoping that when he is introduced here, I do feel like it is going to happen. And inevitable to coming to New Orleans is a foregone conclusion for Moore, that at least he says "who dat" a lot better than Liam Cohen said Duval. Yeah, get "who dat" a lot better than that, please.
That was weird. I can't get that out of my head. He looks like
people have been playing on a loop too.
I think he might be, in like Blade Runner, they have like the replicants or whatever. It's like he's not a real. Like, I think he might be one of those. Like, I think he may be a synthetic person. We'll find out. Duval.
Well, now he's an ongoing meme.
I've always thought Duval was a terrible chant to begin with, so it's partially because of that. But you would think he would have practiced a little bit.
Right, exactly.
So, yeah, I hope that whoever takes the Saints head coaching job is at least in the mirror and been like, who dat? Who dat say they're going to beat them Saints?
Who dat?
Who dat?
Who dat?
But again, Kellen is awkward, so I don't want to get my hopes up too high. That said, I like Kellen. I'm not trying to trash Kellen Moore.
Son of a coach, so he's been there, done that too.
Yeah, I mean, grew up around coaching.
Right.
Was in a ton of college games, won a ton of college games. I think it was 6 years in the NFL with multiple teams. So yeah, I don't want it to come out like I'm trashing Kellen Moore. I just think if you are a Kellen Moore, if you're pro Kellen Moore, you also need to be pro time on task for him as a head coach, because I think it's going to take time for him to get comfortable in that position. All this said, Darren Rizzi has still not accepted the Broncos special teams coordinator job. he still thinks he has a chance at this head coaching job.
I think he knows, too, anything can happen in the last minute.
Yeah. Yeah. The only reason he's still hanging around,
right,
is that he thinks he can still get this job. And I've seen people say like, I don't care what the players think. If you get to a point where Kellen Moore turns you down, that's going to be the most important thing about Darren Rizzi. Is he's going to get every player in that room on his side immediately, right? And that's because the only way you come out of this positively is they need to go win games. And I think he at least gives you a chance to do that. Now, how it looks optically, how the Saints kind of approach that, and how they spin that, whole nother question. But if you do end up on Rizzi, you at least know that Alvin Kamara, Cam Jordan, Demario Davis, all these guys, Blake Grupe definitely, are going to be on his side. And if they lose games, it won't matter. And he might only get a year on the job if that's the case, but I don't know. There are worse things than to have the locker room behind you.
No, we've talked about this before, too, the fact that Cam Jordan and Alvin Kamara have definitely been both very vocal about their support for Rizzi, and I get it.
No question. And we haven't seen Alvin. I expect to see Alvin wandering around at some point. We'll find out. I
saw some kind of promotional thing where he's involved with GQ.
Yeah, he's doing like the Love Actually, like sign things. I mean,
right, yeah.
But, hey, what are you going to do about it?
Maybe you can get him on as a NASCAR analyst.
That's true. He did say he was going to be in Africa, so I don't know. Maybe he's got better things to do.
I know Cam was planning a vacation too, but I saw him walking around. Cam
is too much of a ham to not be around
for this
Super Bowl week. He can't help himself. But all right, you got anything else? You ready to go?
I'm ready to go.
Yeah, we got a couple more interviews lined up today. I'm going to try to drop kind of like a interview pod at the end of the week, which is just, all these interviews you've been getting, just kind of throw them at you so that, we got it.
Right.
We got the job done, right?
I hope so.
Yeah. All right. Who dat? Go Saints. Be easy, y'all. This is Inside Black and Gold. I'm Jeff Nowak. He's Steve Geller. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do that. Otherwise, peace.
Who dat?